Hey, welcome back to Business 101, Introduction to Business. This is now our 8th and last video in this module on ethics and corporate social responsibility. So we've been talking now for 7 lectures about the topic of ethics and how ethics works out, first for individuals, and then of course for organizations, for corporations, for firms, as we consider the topic of CSR. And I have to be honest with you, it's always difficult for me to conduct a series of lectures on ethics. Why is that? Well, because I realize that by the time that you reach my class, you are typically in your early 20s, if not significantly older than that, and you already have a very firm set of beliefs about what is right and wrong in your life. And quite frankly, I'm not going to change your opinions about right and wrong in an hour and a half worth of lectures. I know that. This is the way, generally speaking, that adults learn to think about what is right and wrong, what is good and evil in their lives, and what they want to pursue as their values and their personal set of ethics. In fact, quite frankly, a lot of college ethics classes really take a very simplistic form. They take a form that essentially says, good people do good things, bad people do bad things and go to jail, don't do bad things, don't go to jail. Case study, case study, case study, case study of examples. And I will tell you that throughout my undergraduate degree as well as my graduate degree, I got plenty of those classes and plenty of those lectures, which essentially could be summed up as a quarter's worth or semester's worth of bad people do bad things and go to jail, don't go to jail, example, 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 example. I think, as you can see on this title slide, there's a better conversation to be had when we talk about ethics. There's a better way to start the conversation about ethics, rather than telling you that bad people go to jail. That's important, certainly, and we've done that here because we realize that many, many business majors do end up going to jail even though they never planned on it. But I think there is a better way to start the conversation about ethics. And the way we start that conversation is by first talking about love. Love? What are we really dealing with now? This lecture is starting to make me feel uncomfortable. Well, I would tell you that if that topic is starting to make you scratch your head and feel a little uncomfortable with this lecture on ethics when we talk about the topic of love, it's probably because we're using the wrong definition mentally of love in our minds. You see, it's my contention that we have been sold a bill of goods. We have been handed a cultural definition of love from things like romantic comedy movies and Katy Perry songs. And it's misleading, this definition that we have been handed. Because the definition of love that we have been handed essentially goes something like this. I love you because of the way you make me feel. You make me feel like I have wings. You make me feel like a new man. You make me feel all these kinds of things. And that's what love is. And of course, what happens over the span of years, if not decades, when occasionally you stop making me feel that way? Well, isn't that then permission to trade you in for a younger model that makes me feel that way all over again? Hello, 50% divorce rate here in the United States. And also, that definition of love is how you make me feel. Well, how does that really line up with the way that you love your parents? Do you love your parents simply because of the way that they make you feel all the time? Or for those of us who are fortunate enough and old enough to have children, do you love your children because of the way they always make you feel? Well, let me fill you in on something, because I have 2 boys, and there was a time when my 2 boys were in middle school. Yeah, middle schoolers in the back seat of the car, rambunctious, starting to smell funny in the summer, too much Axe body spray. I can guarantee you this as a dad, you don't always love your sons because of the way that they make you feel. But you already know this, right? You see, I think we have been using the wrong definition of love. And certainly that definition is not helpful when we talk about ethics as leaders in business. Let me suggest for you another definition of love then. I believe the better definition of love is the deliberate, continual commitment to seek the highest and best for another person, even if it means sacrificing what is good for you. Again, the deliberate, continual commitment to seek the highest and best for another person, even if it means sacrificing what is good for you. Now, let me tell you, when my boys were in high school, there was a Saturday I remember well because, well, I was a little grumpy and I was about doing a bunch of chores around the house. And like kids do sometimes, they're talking about all kinds of stuff. And they rolled up when I was in the middle of doing something, sweating in the backyard, and said, "Hey, Dad, we got a question for you." I was like, "What?" They said, "Hey, Dad, what's it mean to be a father? What's it mean to be a parent?" I looked at them, we're in the middle of doing a bunch of uncomfortable work in the backyard. And I said, "Sons, you want to know what it means to be a parent? It means sacrifice." Of course, I was being grumpy that day, right? But some of you realize there's an enormous amount of truth in that, isn't it? That no matter what, the best of parents is always looking to seek out the long-term best for their children. You always want your kids to have a better life than you had. And this is not specifically related to any culture. All good parents of every culture want this for their children, right? And you see, this is what it means to be a great leader. And this is what it means to start the conversation on ethics. Not that bad people go to jail and go do bad things, go to prison, but what is the very best we can do for those around us? How can we demonstrate care and even love for the most difficult people around us, the weakest among us? Allow me to give you an example in this very last lecture. This is my favorite startup in the entire world. You know that I consult for startups here in the Bay Area, and my favorite startup is not a high-tech company. It is not a science company. It's a restaurant. And as you can see here from this slide, it's called the Old School Cafe in South San Francisco, in an area we know as Bay Point, or formerly known as Hunters Point. Some of you familiar with that area, it's a pretty rough area. Let's be just perfectly frank. Bay Point, while it is getting better in some ways, for decades, it's the hood. It's a rough part of town that you don't really want to go at night. You may not want your girlfriend or wife to go there during the day. Well, I found the Old School Cafe because I'm a jazz musician. And a saxophone player contacted me over email, this is several years ago, and said, "Hey, I need a piano player for this Thursday night, this gig at this place, the Old School Cafe. You ever played there?" I said, "No, never even heard of it." He said, "Tell you what, are you free?" I said, "Yeah, I'll play." He said, "Great, I'll email you the directions." So he emailed me the location, the directions, all the contact information. I Google mapped it. It's like, holy smokes, this is a rough neighborhood. I drove over there at 4 o'clock to get set up for the gig that Thursday. And yes, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, not 200 feet away from me, there's a drunk at the bus stop getting rolled by 2 thugs in broad daylight while I'm loading in. Yikes, this is a rough neighborhood. Well, I finally parked my car in a safe, well-lit place, go play the gig. After the first set of music, one of the wait staff, young waiter in his 20s, gets up. It's all inked up, all tatted out, right? Gets up to the microphone, which is unusual in and of itself, right? And this guy says, "Hey, I owe my life to the Old School Cafe. I'd probably be dead or in jail now, except for what they've done for me here at the Old School Cafe. Oh, and by the way, even just a month ago, I wouldn't have had the courage to get up in the mic and talk to y'all. I owe everything I am to the Old School Cafe. I'm so thankful for this place. Thanks so much. Enjoy your dinner." and he gets off the mic, goes back to waiting on tables. This is not typical. This is not typical for any of my gigs. I'm thinking, what is going on here? So I start asking around. I look around. I see all of the wait staff, early 20s. All the frontline management, early 20s. I go peek in the kitchen. With the exception of one guy, everyone else, the early 20s in the kitchen. I'm thinking, what's up with this place? This truly is, as you see in their title, a youth-run supper club. And so I ask around, say, who runs this place? And the band leader says, oh, it's that gal Teresa you see here in the bottom right-hand corner. So when the gig's over, I go over to chat with her. Say, hey, could we have coffee next week just so you can tell me the story of this place? I'm really curious. I've never been in a place like this. I'm curious what your story is. She says, sure. Come over Tuesday afternoon for coffee. Come right back here. We'll chat. So I go over there and we sit down and she tells me her story. And her story sort of goes like this. As a college student, she went to a pretty Tony upscale private school in Southern California, and she gets her degree in psychology. And one of her career goals is she wants to become a probation officer, which in itself seemed a little unusual. But okay, she gets a job as a probation officer, and they assign her to work in the youth camps in LA. What does that mean? It typically means if you're an underage gangbanger and you get arrested, you end up going to one of these youth camps. And that's who she is basically, her charges, who she's taking care of. So during the day, she puts on her battle fatigues and goes out and runs with these other folks. The other social workers. She's running this youth camp. And like any good social worker, she's asking these folks, hey, what is your idea of hope for the future? And they look at her and they say, hope? What are you effing talking about, lady? We got no hope. Because we ain't got no family. And we ain't got no education. We got no connections. We got no skills. All we got is our gang. So as soon as they let us out of this camp, we're going to go back with our gang, go back to our old way of life, where we'll be thieving and lifting cars and breaking into people's houses, sticking people up. And one of these days, we're going to be lifting a car, holding somebody up, and we'll be over the age of 21. So they're going to stick us on some gladiator academy like Quentin or Chino. And by the time we're 30, we'll be a red smear on a concrete floor dead. That's our idea of hope, lady. And so she tells me she realizes that the system has just taken a whole swath of young people and flushed them down the toilet. And so she puts on her battle fatigues to go to work during the day, and she comes home and she cries all night. The souls that are lost because of a system that has thrown young people away. We call them at-risk youth. She begins to think and to pray and research, is there something that one person can do to make an impact in kids' lives? Kids that society has just thrown away. And in her research, she comes to find out that 70% of the jobs in the city of San Francisco are in the hospitality industry. I didn't really realize the number was that high until she said that. 70% of the jobs in San Francisco in the hospitality industry. And so she begins to plan and dream, could it be that if I create a restaurant that will give them hospitality industry skills, while at the same time loving on them and giving them structure and teaching them the kinds of life things that their family never taught them about dignity and honesty and trusting yourself and having dignity, showing respect to all other people, maybe it gives them the skills and the tools and the strength to have a second chance, a way back into society. And so eventually she moves up to San Francisco. And I asked her, how did you afford starting this place? And she said, it wasn't easy. I took all of my savings, all of my retirement, all of my inheritance, to start this place, the Old School Cafe. And it's then, I kid you not, it dawns on me as tears start to stream down both my cheeks. I'm sitting with someone who has gone all in for people that you and I, or at least I, would typically cross the street to walk on the other side of the street from if I saw at-risk youth coming one way, because I'd be too afraid to share the same sidewalk with them. And this lady has gone all in for them. Well, now some folks have been graduating out of the program. I support this organization as best I can, so I'm on the email list, and I get messages every once in a while of someone who's graduated out of the program. One gal says, hey, I've finally been accepted to cosmetology school, and maybe someday I'll be able to actually earn enough money to support a family. Another guy graduated out, got a job as a chef at a restaurant, local restaurant, city of San Francisco, says, for the first time in my life, I actually have hope that I might have a future. How do you put a price on that? You see, this is what it means to have a better conversation about ethics. What could we possibly accomplish if we would only dream? You know, I keep in touch with Teresa, and I tell every class I teach about the Old School Cafe. I try to spread the message of what you are doing for at-risk youth. And she tells me over and over again, even the last email she sent me, she said, if you are telling people about my story, make sure you tell them one thing. You don't need any special skills to help other people. You just have to be willing to try. That's her message to you and to me. What would we be willing to do? What would we be able to do if we were just willing to try? Let me show you then a brief message created by the Old School Cafe about what they do on behalf of young women and young men, in many ways just like us.
I'm Leonard Ferguson. I don't know who I am yet. I'm still trying to figure it out. But before, I used to be called a monster, because I never cared about nobody. I didn't love nobody. I hated everybody that was in my path.
I used to be in a gang. I sold lots of different drugs. I've done drugs. I used to rob people and just do all around bad things.
Like when you grow up in a war zone, like people think, just watching on TV, it's way different than you being living in it. And seeing guns, seeing people get chopped off, like just a slice of meat.
When I would watch my mom and dad fight, and it just gets so crazy where, they're throwing dishes, he's taking out knives and stuff. I mean, I know I cried because when you get scared as a child, you cry. But at the same time, I was just like, oh, this is how life is.
He said he started drug dealing when he was 3. And I was like, how do you start drug dealing at 3? He says, well, my dad was the big drug dealer in the town, and he would give me this bag of something and say, take it down to the neighbor's house. So if your earliest memories are your dad teaching you to be a good soldier, I don't know if I have the words, but it's like instead of like a dad that's a carpenter giving tools and teaching him how to do it, they've not only not given tools, but they've, by the abuse and by the neglect, they've also stripped them and they have holes. You're constantly grabbing for anything to fill those holes of pain.
Never been happy in my whole life, never. I've been mad my whole life, never been happy, not one time. That's why I always drink and always smoke to take away the pain, but it always come back, so I just get another bottle and drink some more.
I feel like the heart of it started when I was a correction officer working with boys that were in gangs. We watch the revolving door, they get out, they come back, and I just thought, there's gotta be, this is horrible. So I would be looking really tough, right, in my combat fatigues and combat boots during the day and military commands, gentlemen, attention. And then I would cry on the way home. In the middle of the night, I would literally wake up and I would just see it. And it would be okay, so the kids are running it. So there'd be the business aspect if they wanted to learn that, or cooking, or serving, or hosting, or performing. Here's 10 different things that you can find what your niche is, and will mentor you as an apprentice, and you could just fly.
I'm glad I met Teresa. Like, she changed my whole life. She taught me how to be a better man and how to be a better person.
First of all, that's my mother.
Without old school, it would be a hard time right now. Trust me. To be honest with you, I feel I'm supposed to be in jail right now. That's why I like coming here. It just makes me feel better about my life. It gives me hope. Because if I wasn't here, I'd have no hope.
All the stuff I did in my past, I can't change it, but I can fix it. I can change for the better.
We don't want to be labeled with our mistakes for the rest of our life. That's not who we are. Old school providing a place that like pulls all that down and pulls back all those labels and says, you're safe here. We see the gold in you, and we want other people to see the gold in you, because that's who you really are.
I enjoy being in the kitchen, because I love being with the family in the kitchen.
I can make my own world. I can control everything.
Just giving me the opportunity to feel useful, like there's somewhere I can help or somewhere I can grow and be a better person, whether it's me doing poetry, singing, or even just being a manager. I get to find myself, like find out who I really want to be.
So she's been washing and she's been scrubbing since daylight, but even after that, still she don't feel right. Been skipping meals, she was too disgusted to work up an appetite, and half the night she's been dreading the sound of her name being called. Answer when he calls your name. Her mother would always say, home should have been her base. Home should have been where she felt most safe, but instead, every minute now he'll be coming, and I look at her and I tell her, run. Run, and don't you look back, you just keep on running. Left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left. Exhausted as she takes every step. Do not fall back, soldier. But he calls for her name. Sir. Yes, sir.
Whew. It's just really humbling, I think, to get a chance to be a small part of believing in some of these young people and giving them a chance at life. But I so feel like it's them, you know, like I'm just so like my heart feels like it wants to explode when I see them really push past to get to have old school, to get to have a real place. So when I see somebody's really desperate, I can say, come on over. You know, we have a job for you. But it's real life-changing opportunities to be able to offer that and to not feel helpless when tragic things are happening. That is like,
We are old school. Come on, people, come visit. We're looking for you guys.
Well, I hope you found that uplifting. I hope you found that encouraging. And I hope that that inspires you to think, what is it that I could possibly accomplish with my life and career? Now, let's be honest. Not all of us are called to go all in for at-risk youth with our entire savings and retirement and inheritance. Not all of us are called to do those kinds of things. But what could we possibly do for the sake of making an impact in the world around us if we were simply willing to try, to use the gifts, the talents, and the education we're receiving to do something great in the world around us? You see, that's the way I think we should start the conversation on ethics. I hope this is encouraging to you. I hope this whole module has been encouraging and enlightening for you. We'll see you in the next module. Take care.